Good morning, everybody. My name is Kyle Morton. I'm a biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at the Lower Great Lakes Fish and Wildlife Conservation Office. Today we'll be talking about the status of lake sturgeon in Lake Ontario. Before we get moving forward, I just want to talk about some brief biology and history of lake sturgeon in Lake Ontario. If you don't know already, the lake sturgeon is the largest freshwater species in Lake Ontario, and they are benthic foragers. Two very important aspects to note here when talking about lake sturgeon is that they have a late sexual maturation. Males don't mature until about 8 to 12 years old, while females can take as long as 14 years to mature. And additionally, they have a very protracted spawning period where the males will spawn between 1 and 2 years, between 1 and 2 years, while the females might spawn once every 4 years. And then to go over the history of why we are focusing on lake sturgeon in Lake Ontario is there's a big crash in the population. And this was based off of basically three really large factors. One is nuisance killing, where commercial fishermen, their gear that they were placing in the lake was getting destroyed by these large lake sturgeon in the gear, so they would then just take the lake sturgeon and throw them to the shore. And then moving forward, they were over-harvested. There was a kind of a transition where they were first viewed as a nuisance, and then folks started to realize that their meat tasted good, their eggs served as caviar, and even their swim bladders produced eyes in glass. And then the last thing is habitat destruction. All throughout their range in the Great Lakes, there was dams that were erected that minimized their ability to go upstream and spawn in their natal spawning grounds. And additionally, a big factor or a big source of habitat destruction was also the paper mills. So moving forward and talking about the restoration goals for lake sturgeon in Lake Ontario, the overarching goal is to increase the abundance of lake sturgeon to support sustainable fisheries within the next 20 years. And the kind of nitty-gritty detail here is to establish at least 4 spawning populations of at least 750 mature individuals in each population. And so kind of a good way to approach this is by breaking up the lake into chunks. So for the purpose of today's talk, we're going to talk about 4 main chunks in Lake Ontario. And this is going to start here at the Western Lake Ontario Management Unit, which extends basically from Sodas Bay to the furthest westmost point of the lake. Moving east, we're talking about the Central Lake Ontario Management Unit. As you can see, this is the Central New York Management Unit produced by the New York State DEC. I would just plan to talk about this area just because it's a great management unit, but we can also include some of the nearshore habitat outside of the tributary as well. As we continue our journey east, we're going to be talking about the Eastern Lake Ontario Management Unit. In this unit, the main population that we'll be talking about is the Black River Bay population. And last but not least, we'll be talking about the Upper St. Lawrence River Management Unit, which is connecting the easternmost portion of Lake Ontario all the way down to the Moses Saunders Dam. All right, so the previous reporting period between 2014 and 2019, we documented only one group of these 4 management units having over 750 mature individuals, and that was the Lower Niagara River. Similarly, we've only documented 2 natural reproduction cases where we had natural reproduction in a system for at least 3 years out of 5. And that was in the Lower Niagara River and the Upper St. Lawrence. And then we took note of the number of individuals stocked into each system. As you can see, there are 0 individuals stocked in the Lower Niagara River because the wild population is doing well enough there. We've got about 6,000 in Central Lake Ontario, and another 31,000 in Eastern Lake Ontario, and lastly we've got about 60,000 individuals going into the Upper St. Lawrence River. So talking about 2020 to 2024, we can see in bold here a few of the changes that we're noticing between the 2 reporting periods. The big notices, we'll start with the Central Lake Ontario unit. We now have over 750 mature individuals in that unit, and this consists of multiple spawning tributaries kind of joining together to produce the greater than 750 mature individuals. Similarly, we're seeing natural reproduction in these systems. And our number stocked in Central Lake Ontario went from about 6,000 to 47,000. There is a change in Eastern Lake Ontario, and it's not that we're seeing greater than 750 mature individuals or natural production. We're just seeing that we've increased the number of individuals stocked there, not substantially, however. And then lastly, the Upper St. Lawrence, we now have over 750 mature individuals spawning here, and the number of fish stocked in the system is almost 180,000, a very significant change between reporting periods. So now we're going to take our talk a little bit further in regarding to each management unit and kind of talking about what we saw in the last reporting period, aka 2014 to 2019, and what we're seeing now. So starting in the Lower Niagara River, which is part of the Western Lake Ontario Management Unit, the last reporting period, we estimated there was approximately 6,500 individuals in the Lower Niagara system. The 2024 estimate is now about 8,500 individuals. So we can see this steady increase. Biologists are continuously still investigating the system, ensuring that there's natural recruitment, ensuring that there's still a broad representation of year classes to just make sure that this population is doing well. So still moving east here a little bit, but maintaining ourselves within the Western Lake Ontario Management Unit. We're talking about the Genesee River. In the last reporting period, there was an estimated 400 adults present from the earliest 2003 and 2004 stocking events. And these stocking events were mostly related to habitat feasibility and lake sturgeon survival in the system. In today's reporting period, it's estimated that there's an additional 345 males that have reached sexual maturity, and we should expect them to start contributing to the spawning stock. And then in the last few years, biologists from the USGS have documented mature females and males both ripe and ready to go for some spawning. Additionally, this last spawning season, biologists collected lake sturgeon eggs using egg traps, and they have collected a handful of wild produced yearlings from the system as well. So there's a lot of promise here. To talk about the Central Lake Ontario Management Unit, I'm going to talk about these two quote-unquote source populations being Oneida Lake and Cayuga Lake. Current estimates in Oneida Lake tell us that there are approximately 500 mature individuals in the system. These individuals have been documented to emigrate from Oneida Lake out into Lake Ontario, so it becomes a little harder for the biologists to kind of keep track of those fish that make it out into the main lake. However, those 500 mature individuals are definitely contributing to the Central Lake Ontario Management Unit. In Cayuga Lake, there's not a current population estimate to tell us the exact number of individuals in the system. However, biologists are catching multiple different year classes while they're also utilizing acoustic telemetry to help identify movement in the lake, but also out into Lake Ontario of both Cayuga and Oneida Lake. Moving into the Eastern Lake Ontario Management Unit, we're going to talk about the Black River Bay population. So in the previous reporting period, there was an estimated approximate 300 mature individuals in the system, while in today's reporting period, there are about 500 individuals in the system. However, the current estimate has some relatively wide confidence intervals, basically saying, well, the population could be around 250 individuals, or it could be around 800 individuals. And we don't necessarily enjoy that range. So the biologists in the system are intending to increase their data collection and really hammer down on the system to try and close those intervals so we kind of get a better idea of what the population is actually looking like. And similarly, they're utilizing acoustic telemetry in this system to kind of elucidate emigration and immigration out and into the system. And last but not least, we'll be talking about the Upper St. Lawrence River Management Unit and focusing in on these two spawning beds that were installed and have been being monitored since 2008. The best year from these reefs came from the second year that they were in the water, 2009, where there was an estimated approximate 1,000 individuals in the population. However, in recent years, the biologists in the New York State DEC have noticed a decline in lake sturgeon observations, and they've also noticed this relative decline in gravel condition where they're seeing zebra mussel hash, which is just dead zebra mussel shells, kind of infilling the interstices of the cobble, algae, and this, which when it dies can create negative conditions on the reef, and lastly sedimentation, where the interstices, which kind of serve as the protector of the egg, gets filled in with sediment. So there's a chance that the reef condition is contributing to this decline in lake sturgeon observations, although this hasn't been confirmed quite yet, and there are further efforts utilizing acoustic telemetry and continued monitoring of the adult population to kind of hone in on why the effective decline in lake sturgeon observations is taking place. And so this is a figure provided to me by the New York State DEC that kind of shows the observed spawning individuals on the reefs. So biologists were taking cameras down the reef and actually counting individuals that were utilizing the reef for what seemed like spawning purposes. And as you can see, 2009 provided that big spike in individuals that they noticed utilizing the reef. And there was another great year in 2014. However, we can see this general decline in lake sturgeon use in the system that we were talking about earlier. And lastly, I want to talk about a U.S. federal listing decision that took place in 2024, where folks thought that lake sturgeon maybe should be considered endangered or threatened throughout their range, which is inclusive of the Great Lakes system. And it was determined that the lake sturgeon as a species does not deserve to be federally protected, as there are growing populations throughout the range, albeit a few populations where they're struggling a little bit, but nonetheless, this is a testament to the research and management of the species throughout the range, and especially within the Great Lakes system. And that takes us through the talk of the status of lake sturgeon in Lake Ontario. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to email me at Kyle_Morton@fws.gov. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day.